Hello there and welcome to another Why You Lost, this time with the Tomb Kings against the Vampire Counts. This one was sent to me by a community member Mars, so thanks to him for the replay. Now he said he couldn't understand why he lost this one, so let's have a look and see where he might have gone wrong. So undead on undead, corpse on corpse action. That sounds incredibly wrong. But let's see what he brought to the party. So he's got up front 5 units of Nehekara warriors. A unit you don't see too often. They're kind of cool. It's nice to see them brought en masse. So this is a kind of low tier damage dealer unit. They'll do okay fighting some other low tier lightly armored troops. But other than that, they're not going to do a great deal. On the flank, he's got Tomb Guard halberds. So he's gone all out on the Tomb King's anti-large infantry front. They're a great unit for holding and staying alive, or for taking on those monsters, but only if they can keep a hold of them. He's got 3 of those spread around the army. His lord is Settra on his Kemrian War Sphinx. Good to have those single large monsters against the vampires. They do have pretty crappy anti-large, so this could pose some good anti-infantry. He's got the Blessed Blade of Tra, which brings some fire damage to the table, so that's going to be very useful against any regenerating units that the vampires often have. And physical resistance and a damage buff. So just keeping it simple on the spells, nothing too crazy, which is fine. That's all good. Got 2 units of Necropolis Knights halberds, anti-large halberds with a Necrotect mixed in there. Probably got some abilities on him as well to help carry them, and of course the heals. So he does have some more mobile anti-large options, but there's no missiles here, which is always a bit of a risky play. We'll see if that affects him too much. Now let's have a look-see and see what the enemy has brought along. We've got 5 units of zombies up front, one of them the Regiment of Renown. Don't see these too often. I'm not really sure the point of them. I can't remember what they do. They have a physical resistance, I think that's about it, but they're still pretty crappy infantry. Got a couple of Graveguard units, got the Sternsman as well, the regenerating Graveguard. So 3 units of Graveguard overall, one of them the Raw. Also got the Unholy Lodestone Corpse Cart, so looking for some regeneration with that. As well as this big bad boy, the Claw of Nagash. Also got 1 unit of Blood Knights, so 1 anti-large cav, always pretty dangerous. And then his lord is Big Boy Manfred on his zombie dragon. So a big mobile flying regenerating lord. Let's see what he's got in terms of spells. He's got Spirit Leech, Raise Dead and Invocation. Those are the only 3 you really need as the vampire counts. He's also got a White King hidden in with the Sternsman. And he's also got a Necromancer, which is hidden over here in these kind of trees, which I imagine is just for the magic buff, the Winds of Magic buff, the Forbidden Rod. And it may also be in case everything in his army dies except his lord. He's keeping this here so his lord doesn't have to land, as can happen if you have only a flying unit left. Let's see what happens here. Let's see where these Tomb Kings went wrong. Lining up his charge attacks with his Nehekara boys. So he's only got zombies to deal with at the front. The Nehekara boys should take those out, but where they're going to struggle is with the Graveguard. Graveguard have got lots of armor on. They are anti-infantry themselves, so they could make those Nehekara boys struggle. He's also got that Chill Geist to try and take out. He's sending in his lord to try and deal with that. He should put some big damage on it if he drops that ability, which adds the fire damage, which he hasn't done yet. Also bringing up the Necropolis Knights. Some halberds coming around the flank. Sternsmen look like they're going to go and meet them. There's a big hold to get after these Blood Knights, which it looks like he's going to do with all his Necropolis boys. Just got to get past that goddamn Claw of Nagash. So he's just going to trade with those Blood Knights. Going to drop some kind of buff there. Dropping the physical resistance buff on his boys and the damage buff. A good move to put the damage on those Blood Knights. They're one of the most dangerous units on this army, so if he can get those gone early, he'd be laughing. They are getting some support though from the Claw of Nagash, which will be healing them and also hurting the Necropolis Knights at the same time. So that thing is a little bit of a problem. Tying up on the left, he's beating away some of the zombies with his Nehekara boys, getting some heals on the Blood Knights. Is the vampire player getting them out of there. He's also spawning up some zombos. Got decent damage on the Claw of Nagash so far. You could maybe try and focus that to get rid of it right now. He's got some halberds. The Crypt Horrors have moved in. I forgot about these Crypt Horrors. I forgot to mention them. He's pulled his Nehekara boys back, so they're not in a bad matchup with the Crypt Horrors. Got the halberds there instead. A wise play. The Dragon and the Blood Knights teaming up on here. There's Necrotect in a little bit of a bad spot here. He's managed to get out of there though. The Necropolis Knight's going to jump on the Lord. So these anti-large units really need to get rid of this big, large, important stuff. If you get rid of the Blood Knights and of course the Lord or the Dragon specifically and the Claw here, maybe the Crypt Horrors as well, then you should be golden. Going after the Claw of Nagash again here. He did use that Blessed Blade to give him the fire damage somewhere around here. I did see it when I watched the replay through the first time. But as you can see, he's not putting out great damage on this thing. I think he's maybe missing a Necro Sphinx in here. The Kemrian's great for the anti-infantry, but The real threat of the vampire counts is they're large, so a Necro Sphinx, which is anti-large, would be great for dealing with a lot of this large stuff. And this unholy lodestone cart still running around. It's not really supporting anything greatly at the moment, but this is one of the few units that these anti-large halberds could actually catch. So they may want to go after that and try to get rid of it quick. Bring their Nehekara boys back in for the infantry. Swap those 2 units back around as he did just now. Sternsman, though, going to be tough to wear down. Blood Knight's getting more heals, being pursued by the Necropolis Knights briefly. He's going to try and jump on the Lord, though. He's got him pinned down there. He can probably stop him from running away. Is Lord, though, going to spawn up some zombies? He is. That's going to slow them down. A nice play from the vampire guy. He's still got the Necrotect on him, though. Or the vampire dragon's going to turn around. And he is wisely going to get that Necrotect out of there. Gets a bit of a push to help him. So, Necrotect avoiding the death there. The Claw of Nagash still standing, though. His Lord's gone off elsewhere. Little fight going on over here. Halberds against Graveguard. And Hekara boys probably committing a bit too much to this area, as the Lord is coming over as well. Doesn't need his Lord over there to really do anything. The threats aren't over there, they're all over here. Dragon Breath from the Lord. Necropolis Knights taking a bit of a pounding. Of course, they will probably be getting some heals from the Necrotect. So he is going to be helping them out. Probably really use Settra over here, though. Currently he's over here. Like I said, fighting this bunch of units was just zombies and Graveguard. They're not really the threat of this army. The Graveguard are just kind of there to get in the way. Probably wants to bring the Lord back over to help with the Blood Knights and the Claw of Nagash and the Corpse Cart as well. That shouldn't really be alive. Gets a charge here on the Blood Knights. Nice work. These Blood Knights just aren't going down. Those heals are keeping them in the game. The Claw of Nagash as well. Being a bit of a problem. Keeping things regenerated and healed up. The Sternsmen regenerate, so they can be difficult to get rid of. Still trying to push after those Blood Knights and get rid of them with the Necropolis Knights, but he can't quite get the bastards. They're crumbling. But we can start to see what's happening with this battle here. Maybe you'll notice it. But Mars is a fairly experienced player. He's a competent player. His micro's been good. He knows where to apply his spells and things like that. But you can start to see what's left. Other than this wiggly Claw of Nagash, apparently. But if we look at everything that's left, everything on this battlefield, what threats are left? What are the kind of threats that are still going? He's managed to beat up the infantry over here, so we got rid of those Graveguard. But all the stuff that's left is all the large things. He's struggling to deal with all the large, which is obviously the strength of the vampires. The Blood Knights are still going, the Lord, the Crypt Horrors are still here, the Claw of Nagash, and even the little Corpse Cart is still going as well. So all of the large stuff he's struggling with. So the problem here seems to be in his build. It's not that he doesn't have enough anti-large, it's just that he's got the wrong kind of it. He's got the 2 Necropolis Knights, which are anti-large. Those are all good. They're getting the heals from the Necrotech. That's working okay for him. But the 3 units of Tomb Guard Halberds haven't really been fighting large very much, because they can't keep up with it. It can just simply run away from them and avoid them, which it has been doing most of the time. So he's got very little effective anti-large and very little mobility in the army. He's only really got the 2 Necropolis Knights and the Lord, which can move around and get around quickly. That Necromancer still hiding out in the way over there in the trees. Although he hasn't lost any health, so I don't think he's even used to Forbidden Rod at this point. But all of the large units is what's giving Mars problems. He can't quite finish them off. He's got a lot of damage on some of them, so he's doing okay. But he just needs that little bit more. He needs that little bit more help with the large. And that's where missiles could come in. If he had 2 units of even skirmish cav, these could just be constantly pestering these things with missiles and putting up that little bit of damage. Or maybe some Ushabti Great Bows. Just 1 unit. They could defend themselves against zombies if those get spawned up on them. But just something that can keep constant pressure on these large units. Because at the moment he can only pressure 1 large unit at a time, because he's only got 1 little anti-large party going around in those Necropolis Knight Halberds. Has got some of the Tomb Guard Halberds finally onto a large unit there, but they're pretty beaten up, so they're not going to be quite as effective. But yeah, most of the infantry he's taken care of. His main problem is that he just can't deal with all this mobile large because he doesn't have enough of it himself. That's pretty much the gist of it. Everything else is okay. Maybe the Nehekara warriors are a little bit overkill. 5 units of them just for killing zombies and skeletons. Seems like maybe it's a little bit too much money spent there. Obviously they're not so great against the Graveguard. The Kepra Guard could have been a good pick here. I think they can beat Graveguard even though they're not armor piercing. More zombies coming up, making it hard for Mars to move around. Got the Ushabti have been spawned up over here on these Sternsmen. Probably a good choice to go for, to try and get rid of them. But still, the large units prevail. The White King trying to get the Lord. He's trying to get rid of these Sternsmen. Still, that Claw of Nagash hangs in there though. The Corpse Cart as well. I think the Blood Knights have finally gone. Oh no, they're there. They're still there. They got 200 health. They're on their way out though. The Lord's still going with half his health. So yeah, still these large units right till the end of the battle, you can't quite deal with. This is why we always need missiles. We can always keep constant pressure on things if there's some missiles around. Or like I said earlier, the Necro Sphinx could have been a good pick here. That Necro Sphinx could just stay on that Claw of Nagash, or on that dragon when it lands, or even into the Blood Knights, and just deal with those elite, most dangerous units of the Vampire Counts, and then you're golden. So that's pretty much the gist of it. You could have maybe gone a bit lighter on the front line and just bought Skeleton Warriors, putting more money into some extra anti-large, but maybe just bringing one unit of Tomb Guard Halberds and then putting the rest on some other kind of mobile anti-large unit. Maybe even another unit of Necropolis Knights, triple them up. That would have given him that extra mobility anti-large power, but it was a valiant defeat all the same. He put up a good effort. Just that lack of anti-large has let him down, I think. Let's take a look at some stats. Settra doing okay. Necrotech mostly about support. Nehekara Warriors took out a lot of zombies, but didn't do a great deal. Some of the Tomb Guard Halberds did well, though. They did get some damage out. But the two Necropolis Knights doing really well. 3,000 and 1,800. Good performance from those. And for his enemy, Manfred doing some good work. 2,500. Alright work from the Graveguard. The Sternsman doing well. The Blood Knights surely did well. 1,500. Pretty good. Crypt Horrors did a little bit. And the Claw of Nagash. Nearly 3,000 for the Claw of Nagash. So you can see those large units is where the enemy got his value from. That Claw of Nagash, the Lord, the Blood Knights. If he could have taken one of those out early, it could have been a different story here. But let's take a look at the build and see what we could have changed to be more effective against the Vampire Counts. This is Mars's build, pretty much as it was, I believe. And the first thing to note about this build is that it's very simple, which is good. A lot of people bring too complex builds for their skill level and they can't handle everything. So simple builds like this can be good, even for more experienced players. It's just less to think about. So the Lord choice anyway, Settra on the Kemrian. Good one for taking out the infantry. Always good to have those large units against the vampires because they have poor anti-large. But like I said, maybe a Necro Sphinx would have been more use here. The anti-large one, actually the Regiment of Renown one has fire damage. So that could be pretty huge. Because, of course, regenerating units are weak to fire, so everything that hits is going to take that damage. That Claw of Nagash would feel that. And I think some of the Vampire Lords would feel that. Maybe not Manfred. I don't think he suffers from weakness to fire. But that fire damage would make short work of the Crypt Horrors and the Corpse Cart as well. So plenty of work for it to do here on all of the large units. It could obviously put hurt on the Blood Knight as well, even without the use of fire damage. But Settra's got the Curse, the Restless Dead. Doesn't have Unyielding Will, which is fine because he was using running around all over the place. These kind of buffs can be kind of useless if you're not going to be near infantry all the time. So that's fine, we don't need those last two. For his spells, he's got the Physical Resistance, which is always useful, so a good one to bring. And a damage spell as well, so nice and simple, 2 spells, you know where you're going to use them. That's all you need to look after your units. None of these other ones are greatly useful perhaps against the Vampire Counts. Maybe Desiccation here could be useful. It's quite an expensive spell though, because it's an AoE, so it might be harder to find good spots to use that, but doesn't necessarily need that anyway. It does have the Blessed Blade of Tra, which is going to be useful because of that fire damage, obviously against those regenerating targets. So Settra set up okay, got the anti-infantry mount. Maybe could have used the fire mount though in the chariot. Maybe that would have been a better call, but either is a good choice. They got plenty they could both do. Got the Necrotect on a chariot as well to keep him mobile. He's got the melee attack boost, which is good. He doesn't have the missile resistance and armor though. Obviously missile resistance isn't needed against the vampires, but the armor could be useful, but don't think there's anything wrong with having that off. Got the heal obviously, and he also has the Vambraces of the Sun, which gives a 22% fire weakness to any enemies nearby, so that's going to be very useful against all those regenerating units, and it reduces their melee attack. So that's 22 fire weakness on top of the already 25% I think weakness from regen, so that could be a pretty horrible combo. The Elixir of Might could be useful here as well with the extra melee attack, but not essential. Now the front line is maybe where I had a little bit of an issue. Like I said, a lot of anti-infantry just to take out zombies for the most part, maybe skeleton warriors, but these aren't going to take out Graveguard effectively, so to bring 5 of them, they've just got too much armor. You can't really do much about them. They're anti-infantry as well, so they're probably going to beat up those Nehekara boys. So maybe didn't need to make such an investment in the front line. Could have maybe got the job done with skeleton warriors even. Just 4 or 5 units of those. They'd beat up the zombies, they'd have a stalemate with skeleton warriors of course, and they wouldn't be able to beat Graveguard, but they do okay. We could maybe bring 1 unit of skeleton spears if you want a bit of anti-large, even though it's obviously not the best. But the 3 units of Tomb Guard Halberds, this maybe is where the problem was, because it's a lot of money for all of these units that can't keep up with all the large. One of them did pretty well, but the other 2 were fighting infantry most of the time, so maybe just 1 unit of those. Just 1 nice anti-large. We could probably lose the normal skeleton spears if we're going to do that. Then we got the 2 Necropolis Knight Halberds. So they're a good strong unit, teamed up with the Necrotect like he had them. He was healing them up. He had the melee attack buff going for them as well, so that was all helping them out. pretty good anti-large core, but very expensive. So maybe there are other options we could try. And linking into that lack of missiles, we could maybe bring just one unit of skeleton archers, but those are going to be very vulnerable to having zombies on their face and just being killed off quickly. So they're maybe not the best choice. You could have perhaps gone for some skirmish cav, who could at least keep themselves safe, so they can shoot things and just keep moving to stay out the way. Those could be an option. Maybe one or two. Two is probably best because they're quite slow in their damage output. But perhaps going a little more all out on some Ushabti Great Bows could be a good call. Armor-piercing missiles could take care of any of those large units, the Blood Knights, the Zombie Dragon, the Claw of Nagash, and of course they got decent melee stats, so they can handle themselves. If some zombies get spawned up on them, they won't do too much damage, they should be able to take them out, or they can just potentially run away from them. So those could be a good call. Just one unit though, so they don't get overrun and you lose too much money if they do get after them. And instead of Necropolis Knights, we do have the option of Sepulchral Stalkers, who are also a great anti-large unit, provided you can make use of their charge defense and their ranged attack. Stats-wise, they're not quite as good as the Necropolis Knights, as you can see on the unit card there with the comparison, but they are considerably cheaper, so it does save you a lot of money that you could put elsewhere. But with the combination of the charge defense and their ranged attack, if you could hit the Blood Knights with some ranged attacks and then take their charge and take away their charge bonus, the Sepulchral Stalkers could beat those Blood Knights. But having that ranged attack as well means we can get rid of the Great Bows, because now we have a ranged attack. We have something we can shoot at the air with if we want to, or to shoot at those large units. But I think the real potential star of this matchup is that Sphinx of Usef, because I think if we team up its fire damage with the Necrotect and the Vambraces of the Sun, that's an extra 22% weakness to fire, on top of the already weakness to fire that these regenerating units have, which is 25%, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so that's nearly 50% fire weakness if you combine those two units, because that will stack and potentially be absolutely disgusting. In fact, I want to try it out right now. So we got the Big Daddy Sphinx with its fire damage. We're going to go after this Claw of Nagash, and we're going to keep the Necrotect simply nearby. That's all we need to do, is to get it nearby, and you'll see on the unit card that the Vambraces of the Sun will affect it, and then it should be taking way more damage. Let's have a look. If we look down on the left, Vambraces of the Sun minus 22% fire weakness. So simply that Necrotect being nearby is causing that. It's now being attacked by fire damage from the Necro Sphinx, and we're doing some big damage to this thing already. Nearly a third of its health gone, nearly down to half health. So this could be an absolute disgusting no-brainer for the Tomb Kings against the Vampire Counts every time. It's so strong. 2,400 health, takes a hit down to 1,600 health. That's 800 damage it just did on that hit. And another 800. It went from 1,600 to 800. This thing is getting absolutely mashed up, and it is dead. So, yeah, that combo of Necrotect with Vambraces of the Sun and this goddamn Raw Sphinx, that's a deadly deal for the Vampire Counts. Let's try this Lord. This is Manfred though, so he's not actually weak to fire, so we're not getting the stacking buff, but we are going to get the 22% weakness to fire, which is going to help this boy do some extra damage. Did about 600 damage on that hit to Manfred. 3,500 down to 2,900, so there's another 600 damage. From 2,900 to 2,300, there's another 600, so yeah, this is just a horrible combination against those regenerating units. And because that Sphinx is large, it's going to be very hard for the Vampire Counts to take down. So I think that is a must pick for the Tomb Kings against the Vampire Counts. So yeah, safe to say that the Sphinx of Usef is a good combo with the Necrotect with that extra item that gives them the fire weakness. And that's going to be effective against Terrorgeists as well, which you often see in Vampire Counts armies because they regenerate too. So just an untold amount of use for that unit. But let's see what else we can do with fire units. We could maybe bring Settra down just onto a horse. So he's not going to be so anti-infantry now, but he's got the magic and he is quite strong in his own right. But that money could allow us to get another large unit, maybe the Hyro Titan. Fire attacks again, so another unit that's going to be good against regenerating units. Also good as anti-infantry, because the vampires struggle taking down large things. So the Hyro Titan could actually be a pretty good pick here. It's got the two spells as well, Spirit Leech and Shem's Burning Gaze. Shem's Burning Gaze, fire damage on that. So again, that could be useful against regenerating large things. So maybe I might like this as a build, just as it is. Got the Skeleton Warrior frontline to deal with the enemy frontlines, or just to pin the zombies and things in place. Not going to be able to deal with the Graveguard with those though. We'll need to do some other things. With that we could use the Hyro Titan. He's going to be the master of taking out infantry. But the Sphinx could help with that too, if need be. So we've got the Graveguard dealt with. As for the Claw of Nagash and all of this large really, well, the Necro Sphinx is of course going to come and take care of these, and the Hyro Titan with the fire damage. They could all deal with any of these large things. The Blood Knights, the Crypt Horrors, the Corpse Cart, these could all be dealt with by those two, the big large. They won't be able to do much about it. This Sphinx especially, as we saw, is going to absolutely murder. The Sepulchral Stalkers can help with Blood Knights or any other large as well. We've got the Tomb Guard in there, so yeah, that could be a good call. The only other thing we might see from the vampires is a Terrorgeist, but again, the Sphinx will have that covered. But maybe we lose the High Road Titan. We want some different anti-infantry. The Kepra Guard, as I said, always really good against most of the vampire infantry. They can probably beat up the regular Grave Guard. They got magical attacks as well if there was any wraiths or anything like that. We've got a bit of money left over. Maybe those great bows for the ranged attack. There's a whole bunch of different ways, but there is a lot of great tools for the Tomb Kings against the vampire counts, I think. We could maybe save the money losing the Blessed Blade. That gives us just under. Don't think there's anything better to lose, really. We could maybe take Unyielding Will and keep Settra more with the army. It's a little too expensive. Maybe the Necrotech can take something. Maybe the Elixir of Might. There we go, that could do. So that gives extra melee attack. That could be good to drop on the Sphinx or anything fighting those important units to give them some extra melee attack and get out that extra damage. So there's a whole bunch of things to think about for the Tomb Kings when fighting the vampire counts. A few adjustments to Mars's build that he could have made. Just needed a little more agile anti-large units and maybe some missiles as well to help him out. And obviously, he needed that raw Necro Sphinx because it's absolutely disgusting when teamed up with that Necrotech ability. So yeah, there we go. A bunch of things to think about. Tomb Kings got some pretty strong options against the vampire counts, as they are pretty predictable, the vampire counts. It's usually a cheap holding line that just wants to tie you up and then a bunch of strong monsters. Deal with the strong monsters and they don't really have a lot left, to be honest. So just need to make sure you can stay after it with good mobile anti-large, including missiles potentially. I hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the future.